What a week. From protests over who should control the Detroit public schools to the resignation of Detroit Police Chief Warren Evans to key endorsements in the race for Michigan governor. In a little more than a week, voters will cast their ballots in Michigan's primary election. At the top of the ticket, the candidates who want to be the next chief executive of the state of Michigan. One person who wants the job is Speaker of the Michigan House of Representatives, Andy Dillon. We'll talk to him today and find out why this Democrat wants that job. And later on our Sunday morning program, TV7 poster Tim Kiska tells us how to get the information you will need to make an informed decision at the polls on Election Day. It's Sunday, July the 25th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. Speaker of the Michigan House, Andy Dillon, our guest today on Spotlight. Mr. Speaker, thanks for coming in. It's a pleasure having you.
Thanks for having me.
The job that you're running for, you know it's a tough job, and you know for a large portion of it, it's a thankless job. Why do you want that job so bad?
Yeah, because it's fixable. And last fall, as I was weighing whether or not to run, the first question I asked is, in the last 10 years, Michigan's 50% of all job loss in the United States has happened right here in Michigan. We've gone from a top 20 per capita income state to a bottom 10. And so I stepped back and say, can you fix this? And I think you can, and I see the path. So I think I bring the right kind of leadership. 20 years in the private sector, 10 working directly for or with troubled businesses. And now I've got 5 years of experience in Lansing, so I'll be able to hit the ground running.
How will you create jobs? That's what everybody talks about. Every poll that we do, people say that's their #1 concern. But if it was that easy, I'm sure the current governor and others would have created thousands and thousands of jobs. How do you do that?
Right, and government doesn't create jobs per se, but we surely do create an environment that allows job creation. During my term here, we had a company wanting to invest billions of dollars into building a new plant in Michigan, and it took over 3 years to issue the permits for them. We have a mine in the UP with deposits valued at around $8 billion. It took over 5 years to get the permits issued. So government has been in the way of job creation in some respects as well. But when I look at the state, despite all that job loss, we're #2 in the country in research and development investment. So that knowledge-based economy that every state we compete with, every country we compete with is chasing is sitting right here in Michigan. And to me, that can become the pipeline for the middle-class jobs of the future. So we need to preserve, protect, and grow that knowledge-based economy that resides here in Michigan. Second biggest industry in Michigan is agriculture. It's a $70 billion industry. I look back and think for all the time we spent preserving and protecting manufacturing jobs, can we focus on growing our ag footprint? And the answer is yes. We can have more Kellogg's and more Gerbers and more Jiffys where we're processing the raw materials that we raise and grow in the state. The other two things that I see is the tourism industry. It's a growing industry in Michigan, and it's not just hunting and fishing and golf. It's also the arts entertainment offerings right here in the city of Detroit. And the fourth thing is the infrastructure we have and the skilled workforce. Last summer, Ford Land asked me to come in and meet with the folks that want to take over the Ford Wixom plant. And they told me, we'd rather be in Texas, but you've got this turnkey facility sitting right here. It's 5 million square feet. We'll be 18 months ahead of the curve if we come to Michigan. You've got a skilled workforce. We can be an attractive place to do business if we get Lansing with a little more focus, a little more urgency.
Before you become governor, you have to get through the primary, and you have to get past your primary opponent. Verge Bernero, mayor of Lansing, in his ads that are running all across the state, has typecast you as someone who is a corporate fat cat or will look out for the corporate community and not the little guy, and anti-union. Yeah. True or false?
Well, my wife will attest to the fact that we're not fat cats. Born and raised in Redford Township, we still live there. That's the values I brought to Lansing. It's a middle-class town. As I was growing up on a street of 1,000-square-foot homes, the first 12 homes on that block had over 70 kids, and every home was a single, wage earner with, one parent home raising the kids. That's what we need to rebuild in Michigan, that middle-class family. So it's all about fighting for the middle class. That's why I went to Lansing. And there's a lot of labor supporting Andy Dillon. I mean, you see a divide. The labor that's behind my opponent.
But you don't have the AFL-CIO, which is something that just seems almost unnatural for a Democrat, that you've got to have that. You've bumped heads with the MEA, and you've angered a lot of the unions with some of the proposals that you have put out for many people who are part of labor feel as though these are unpopular proposals, whether it's health care or it's going after their pensions. These are things that are near and dear to their heart.
Fair enough, but you have a lot of private sector labor unions supporting me. You have the Teamsters supporting me, who also have public sector employees. We basically have all law enforcement and firefighters throughout the state endorsing this candidacy. You have the operating engineers, the building trades, the carpenters, Unite Here. I mean, we've got a lot of labor behind us, but the labor that's lined up behind the mayor is more of the status quo, those folks that don't want to see any change. And if there's one thing I can promise the voters in this state has to change. You know, we have 30% less revenues coming into the general fund than we had 10 years ago. And if we're going to fund priorities like education and health care and public safety, the state of Michigan has got to embrace change. Look at Ford Motor Company. They embraced change ahead of GM and Chrysler, and they were able to save that company. When Alan Mulally came to Ford Motor Company, it was arguably in worse financial health than General Motors. First thing he did was leverage the farm, borrowed a lot of money to invest in his people, invest in his company, and invest in a new product line. The state of Michigan's no different. You know, we have to invest in our people, which means we have to give them access to a good education. We have to keep them safe in their neighborhoods. We have to invest in our infrastructure in this state. So change is coming whether we want it or not. But, you know, I do it in a very balanced approach, and everyone's welcome to sit at the table and have input and craft a coalition when we move big legislation through the Capitol. I've generally built a big coalition, and I'm a consensus builder.
All right, we need to sneak a commercial break in here. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about education as well as everything else that we can squeeze in with Speaker of the Michigan House of Representatives, Andy Dillon. We'll be right back. He's a Democrat from Redford, Michigan, and he is the Speaker of the Michigan House of Representatives, and he's our guest today on Spotlight and a candidate for governor. Mr. Speaker, some have called you a closet Republican because of some of your positions and because you've been maybe middle of the road and not what people consider that true Democrat towards some of the real traditional values that Democrats have traditionally done. Would that be a fair assessment? Typecast you that way?
I don't think so. I mean, you know, if you're fighting for the middle class, if you're fighting to make certain that the government safety net exists and that we're making certain people have access to affordable health care, making certain they have access to a good educational opportunity, I'm about making certain that every kid in the state of Michigan has access to the American dream, and I don't care if they live in Bloomfield Hills or the city of Detroit or Flint or Pontiac, but we in government have a responsibility, and what I don't see in Lansing from the other side of the aisle is a concern about that safety net. And as you may recall, there was a threatened recall that actually happened, and I had to fight back a recall because I was fighting for those values of making certain there was enough resources to fund education and, you know, public safety and access to health care. We've had some very difficult budget battles, but those were about fighting for those priorities. So when I was making those fights, you never heard this word. You hear that now from, you know, a group of people that are with the other, you know, the other candidate in this race. But I fought for the values of this party every day I've been in Lansing.
I've heard people say that if you can just get through the primary, that you may be Republicans' worst nightmare because of some of the positions that you've taken that have been more middle-of-the-road positions, that you may be more appealing to crossovers, even maybe some independent and some liberal Republicans. Is that one thing that you're perhaps aiming for, that if indeed you can get past that primary, that you might be more of a consensus builder in a time when people say they are sick and tired of partisanship?
You're absolutely right. And I've demonstrated I can build these coalitions, whether it be the 21st Century Jobs Fund. When I was in the minority, I reached out to the Republicans and crafted a bipartisan solution that will help diversify the state's economy. When we did energy reform, we reached across the aisle, worked in a very bipartisan way, and we built a coalition that included the utilities and the business sector and labor and the environmentalists and got comprehensive energy reform, which is leading to the green jobs of today. I've demonstrated I can build those coalitions. So that's the type of leader this state needs, and it's what the voters want. When we did our research about can this guy win a Democratic primary, the answer is absolutely yes, because they're sick of the partisan gridlock and the fighting. They want coalition builders, someone that will reach across the aisle and move the state forward. So I'm very confident we'll do well in the primary. And yes, I'm where the voters are. I don't have to run to the left and change who I am for the primary and then run back to the middle for the November election. I can just stay my course and campaign with the values that I had as Speaker and going forward with my vision for the state, it's no different. I'm the same person today as I was 2 years ago, as I will be tomorrow.
Your Democratic opponent has taken shots at you and attacked you in their political ads for being pro-life and being a pro-life Democrat, and said, how in the world can you be that? And has even criticized you and said that you've voted against exemptions for even rape and incest. True or false? And is that the type of governor that you would be?
Yeah, I didn't come to Lansing for that issue, and I recognize it's an important issue, and it's one that needs to be considered in Lansing. But I came to Lansing about jobs and the economy. You know, I'm born and raised a Catholic. It's my religious beliefs that life begins at conception. I'm not going to compromise those values. But as Speaker of the House, we had a 58-person majority when I started. We now have 67. We grew it by 9 seats, and every one of the new members of the House of Representatives is a pro-choice candidate. I don't bring that issue into my caucus room. I recognize that it's a minority position within my party. I respect that. But a couple weeks ago, when you saw Gilda Jacobs come out, Senator Gilda Jacobs, to support my candidacy, that's an important issue for her, very important. But she said, you know what, the reason I'm supporting Andy Dillon is he has the ability to build a coalition. He has a vision for the future, for the state, to get the economy turned around. Both of her daughters had to move to New York City to find work. And she goes, I want my grandkids living near me here in Michigan. This guy has the best vision. So on that one issue, I'll give him a pass. And if you can look at my 4 years in Lansing, I will vote my conscience, but I don't advance that issue. It's not something I inject into my caucus, because I know that, you know, 2/3 of them disagree with me on that issue, and I respect that.
You received the endorsement of former Detroit Mayor Dennis Archer. You also received the endorsement the other day from Dave Bing, the current mayor of the city of Detroit. Certainly Mayor Bing has his hands full. One of the key issues right now he's embattled in is the future of the Detroit public schools. He's saying that he wants control, that he needs control to be able to help turn the city around. Where are you at on this issue, and should he indeed be involved in the Detroit public schools, and should he have control of?
Yeah, well, I'm very proud to have those 2 endorsements, and I can tell you, you know, when we were courting Mayor Archer, the urban agenda was critically important to him, and we crafted what we call a 12-point agenda. One of the first things I'll do as governor is make certain that there's someone in my cabinet responsible for implementing that agenda, because there's no magic bullet to fix our cities. It's a combination of access to jobs and health care and education, and safety in the neighborhoods and transportation. So you're going to need someone that's focused every day on moving the urban agenda forward. And it's a high priority for me. And it's going to have to be someone that has the ability, when they pick up the phone, to call a department head within state government, or Mayor Bing, or Bob Ficano, that they get an answer and a return call. Yeah. Because in order to turn our cities around, you're going to have to break through a lot of barriers and get a lot of coalition building. Education is critically important to that.
Should he have control?
When we met about that yesterday, I think there's an agreement now between the City Council and the Mayor to put an issue before the voters. And I do want to see the voters of Detroit speak and tell us, you know, what the city wants. I don't want to see Lansing impose upon them a governance structure. But what I can tell you this is the #1 criteria is what's best for the kids. You know, the adults fighting is doing nothing to educate a kid in the city of Detroit. So you need something, you need a system that has accountability. I think there's going to be a consensus between the City Council and the Mayor, and I will support them in going out to the public and making certain that we sell a governance structure that's best suited for the kids of Detroit.
By and large, you want it to come from the people. You want the people to be able to have a say in this issue.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, we need to get another commercial break in. We'll hurry right back with a final segment with Speaker of the House, Andy Dillon. Mr. Speaker, one of the controversial issues has been the DRIC, or the bridge to Canada. You're either for it or against it, a lot of people. Where do you stand on this issue? And certainly this is another issue that you've been criticized by your opponent on.
I don't understand it. This is, has universal support. This is saying to the private sector, you know.
Well, I would say universal. You go in Southwest, you get a debate just among the people right there in Southwest.
Well, you have the Detroit Regional Chamber, you have Ford, GM, and Chrysler all wanting it. You have Elbrooks, Patterson, John Engler, Governor Blanchard, Governor Granholm. The Republican-controlled Senate of Ohio unanimously endorsed the project the day we voted it out of the House. I think this is politics. 2 bridges is better than having 1. It's 10,000 jobs that can be created right in the city of Detroit in the next couple of years. And this is saying state taxpayer dollars won't be used. Let the private sector come and have a partnership with the government, and they'll repay themselves through the tolls on the bridge. This is the largest trading corridor in North America. It's $120 billion of commerce. And we have one bridge. There's 4 bridges in Buffalo. If we had a problem with that Ambassador Bridge, the impact on Detroit would be devastating. So I think it's very widespread support. Let's not say universal, but most of the governmental leaders in Southeast Michigan, as well as the private sector, are saying, let's do this. I think you've got a little bit of politics being injected in this.
Have you given serious thought yet to who or what type of person you would want as a running mate? How important? There's been articles out here, people saying there needs to be someone maybe of color on this ticket, and is that something that's important to you? And because you're from this side of the state, would it be important to have someone from the west side of the state to help balance out that ticket?
Yeah, I mean, having a ticket that reflects the population of the state is important to me. So diversity, whether it be geographical or gender or race, is important. And, you know, we'll make certain we pick the best running mate. Those criteria are very important to me, and we're working on that right now as to who is the best suited candidate to be the lieutenant governor. One name that's been floated out there this week is Brenda Lawrence, the mayor of Southfield. Is that someone that would be on your short list? She's on the list, and we've had conversations about it. In fact, within the last week, I talked to her about it. So she's someone that's on the list, yes.
Is there something about Andy Dillon that perhaps the average person doesn't know, but it would be important for the voters to know about you?
Yeah, I think, you know, the combination of the public sector experience, you know, with 10 years working directly with and for troubled businesses, I mean, that's the #1 issue challenging the state. And we've heard a lot of discussion about, you know, the budget battles in Lansing, but a lot on the policy side, a lot has been done in the state, from the 21st Century Jobs Fund to the energy reform, to protecting the Great Lakes water, to the Race to the Top legislation that's going to help us turn our troubled school buildings around. And all of those were done with, you know, coalition building. And yeah, I advance some things that might not be popular politically, but they're the right thing to do. And I just am not going to be politically safe. I will take some risks in this job because the state of Michigan has to embrace change, or we're going to be in trouble. And you can look at the maybe unpopular things that I've advanced as speaker, and I did it because it was the right thing to do, not because it was politically popular. That's what we're going to need in our next governor, someone that's willing to take on the tough fights, but at the same time build a coalition and not, you know, be a name caller, because at the end of the day, you have to get Republicans and Democrats working together to forge bipartisan solutions. So I'm not a flamethrower that will make it very difficult to get the people back to the table.
All right, there are a lot of questions we want to get to. Unfortunately, we don't have time. If you get past the primary, we promise to invite you back, and we'll talk about the remainder of those issues. Very, very quickly, though, you and Mike Cox, who's running on the other side of the fence politically, are from the same high school. You graduated the same year. In the back of your mind, would that be the ideal opponent for you in the fall, if you can get past Virg Bernero in the primary?
I'm focused on August 3rd, and we'll worry about what's next after that.
All right, that sounds like a very political, diplomatic type of answer that we're just going to put that aside till then, and maybe we'll get a Catholic Central matchup at some point in this whole thing.
You never know.
All right, thank you so much for coming in, and good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you.
All right, it's a pleasure. And we'll be back in just a second. We'll sit down for a few minutes with one of our Channel 7 posters, Tim Kiska. He'll give you some information that you need to be able to go in and make an informed vote on Election Day. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Spotlight. Joining me now is Tim Kiska, a familiar face, one of Channel 7's posters. And welcome back to Spotlight.
Thanks for inviting me.
Election time again. You've been involved in a project that people ought to know about, because it's a good way for people to get information. I mean, we all have our websites, and certainly WXYZ.com and WWJ and everything, which are good places to get information. But this is kind of a unique project, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, at least we think it is. Basically, we figure that there are a lot of half the state house is up for re-election. Half the state houses have open seats. 29 of 38 state senate seats are open, and most people don't know who's running in their district because they're busy. They got stuff going. So we put together a website where not only do you have the biographical information of everybody who's running in your district, but we went on a road for 3 weeks and shot video of about 200 roughly 200 candidates.
That's a lot of candidates.
A lot of candidates, but
Yeah.
it was a
And
great...
you talked to all these folks.
We did.
Yeah.
We did, and it was a great educational experience in a lot of different ways.
And the website is myvote.org.
MIVOTE.org. And I like to describe it as the Almanac of American Politics crossed with YouTube. And that's kind of the way it looks.
What did you learn that really stuck with you? What impressed you the most, or what just jumped out and said, wow, I didn't realize that?
A lot of passion out there. There are a whole lot of first-time candidates. There are at least 600 people now running for public office this time around. I mean, for Congress, State House, State Senate. A lot of passion, a lot of first-timers who are looking around saying, boy, my state is broken. I got to do something to fix it, and I got to get off the couch, and I got to do it myself. So whether some of these people are qualified is a different question, something that the voters will decide.
They at least walk in with the passion if they get elected.
Totally.
Was there a key issue that they kept talking about?
Yes, one over and over again: jobs, jobs, jobs. And everybody that you talk to has another story. One fellow out of Grand Haven talking about the fact that his daughter graduated from Hope College, couldn't get a job.
Hope
College out in western part of the state, couldn't get a job. And he just said, by God, I wasn't thinking about running, but if this is the situation, I got to do something about it. You hear that over and over and over again. Somebody who's had a personal experience with somebody, some family member, some friend being out of work suddenly, and them just saying, enough, I got to do something.
It sounds like even if we didn't have term limitation, that there would be term limitation given the atmosphere that you've been hearing and walking through.
Well, it seems, you know, we're not going to know until Election Day, but it seems like there's a little bit of an anti-incumbent thing going on right now. A lot of people looking around saying there's got to be a better way, and ultimately the voters will decide that too.
All right, so once again, people can go to MIVOTE.org, and they can get all the information that they want to get.
Click on a map of Michigan, roughly where you live. It'll pop up everybody who's running in your district.
All right. Tim Kiska, thanks for coming in. We'll see you back here on Election Day, and I know that you're working on crunching all those numbers, and hopefully we'll have some great information for us as well as the viewers.
I can't wait.
All right. We can't wait to have you.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thanks so much for coming in. Always a pleasure talking to you. And we want to thank you at home for joining us. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the spotlight. We hope you have a great week.
This Week is next on 7.